You are listening to Veggie Doctor Radio, and this is episode number 274. Welcome to Veggie Doctor Radio. I am your host, Dr. Yami, board-certified pediatrician, certified lifestyle medicine physician, certified health and wellness coach, author, speaker, mother, wife, and human being. I passionately believe in the power of diet, habits, and mindset in sparking and sustaining well-being and joy in our lives. This podcast combines expert interviews and thoughtful monologues to explore plant-based nutrition, lifestyle medicine, parenting, mindset, and other exciting and fun topics. I hope that these episodes inspire you, uplift you, and equip you with the knowledge and tools to live your best life. Are you ready to get started? Let's do it. Hello, veggie lovers. Welcome to another episode of Veggie Doctor Radio. Today, I have with you Dr. Eduardo Corassa. Before I tell you about him, I want to remind you that the information on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not meant to replace careful evaluation and treatment. So if you have concerns about you, your child, anybody in your family's eating, nutrition, or growth, please consult a health professional. So, Dr. Eduardo Corassa is from Brazil, and he is a clinical nutritionist that graduated from Universidade Veiga de Almeida with an emphasis on raw and vegetarian diets within the health model called Hygienismo, natural hygiene. He is the creator of the company Saúde Frugal. He is the author of 9 books, 5 online courses. He's a YouTuber, culinary specialist, international speaker, and minister of immersion retreats. He graduated in literature, specialized in natural hygiene by the University of Natural Health. So he also has extensive experience as a speaker with TEDx Talks in Brazil, nutrition and health events, colleges, teaching postgraduate courses, and he studied raw food and fasting abroad with the world's main raw food leaders and hygienists in Brazil and abroad on several occasions. He has lived on an exclusively raw diet for 16 years, and for 13 years he has coordinated Saúde Frugal, teaching how to obtain health by living healthfully using a whole raw diet based on a frugivore diet, sun, sleep, physical exercise, and reintegration with the laws of nature. He is one of the main promoters of the Brazilian raw foodism and a pioneer in promoting frugivorism in Brazil. At the age of 22, he was diabetic, suffering from gastrointestinal, immunological, respiratory, and inflammatory problems. He was scheduled for surgery for a herniated disc and a deviated septum, and he was able to reverse these illnesses and avoided his surgical needs through the hygienist lifestyle. So we talk about that in the podcast. And he has also been practicing long water fast and intermittent fasting for 16 years, having already done several long water fasts, one of them last year for 39 days, water-only fasting at a specialized center that supervises this in Costa Rica. So I wanted to have Dr. Corassa on because he has a really interesting story. He was actually a professional, internationally renowned video gamer back in the day between the ages of 17 and 22. So very interesting journey, very interesting experience that took him from one extreme lifestyle kind of to another extreme lifestyle. I'll let you be the judge of that. But in this episode, we learn about his journey, how he transitioned, what it was like, how he went from being a professional gamer to a clinical nutritionist that now advocates for a frugivore diet, which is different from fruitarian diet. I did not know that. And we talk about protein, it comes up. Even I have the protein question when it comes to a diet like this. And we also talk about time-restricted feeding, water-only fasting, and his experience with that. I think this is a really interesting episode. And for those of you out there that are more raw-leaning, you'll probably appreciate that. For those of you that are curious about raw food diets, integrating that with fasting, then this will give you some more information on that. But remember, this is something that you should run by your health professional if it's something that you'd like to do for yourself and get more information so that you are able to do it safely, because there are some caveats to how you approach this type of diet, this way of eating. So, thank you so much for being here for another episode. And for new listeners, welcome. So glad to have you here. I hope you enjoy this episode and you browse some of the other episodes available here on Veggie Doctor Radio. Thank you so much. And now let's welcome Dr. Eduardo Corassa. Dr. Eduardo Corassa, welcome to Veggie Doctor Radio.
It's a pleasure to be invited, and it's a pleasure to be here and show a little bit of my work in the last 17 years.
Awesome. Well, you have a very interesting story that I'm excited to learn about. And you're talking to us all the way from Brazil, correct?
Exactly. Rio de Janeiro, actually the capital, but not the big city, right? I left the big city because I'm interested in health. So,
Nice. Yeah, I understand that. Well, big city is a stressful place, so probably not as aligned with managing stress, getting good sleep. So,
yeah, I have 300 fruit trees on my yard, and fruit trees are actually green places are actually correlated with better healing from surgeries, more IQ, and a lot of more phytoncides from plants that they secrete. So you get a better immune system, a better glycemic control, even from the gases we inhale from plants. So being around plants is really important for our health, but people underestimate that.
yeah, there's a lot of things to say about that. Well, let's start at the beginning because you have a very interesting story. So, tell us a story about how you transitioned to a plant-based vegan diet and what prompted you to make the change.
Well, I grew up as a sick child. My parents were like lawyers, always outside from home. So I was, a lot inside my home, like eating a lot of junk food, playing a lot of video games, being sedentary, getting not too much sunshine, and a lot of chrono disruption because of video games and movies and things late at night. So I grew up obese with a lot of health issues and always trying. My mom didn't know better back then, and always trying drugs, drugs and drugs and drugs. When I got to 17, I became one of the world uh, best Counter Strike players in the world. So I traveled the whole world, like several countries, like Korea, uh, United States several times, Europe several times, like to play Counter Strike. Right, we were like cyber athletes in the beginning of the cyber athlete movement because nowadays it's way much bigger. And we were kids. I had 17. I didn't know I had to take care of myself. So if people around me smoke like a pack of cigarettes a day, one cigarette, two cigarettes, no big deal, right? If people eat like a lot of junk food, if I eat some, no big deal. And then I ended up getting sicker and 30 kilos overweight. I was almost 100 kilos. That's probably 220 pounds, something like that. So I was sick and I was not playing that well. So I wasn't focused on my health back then because I thought that was normal. But I was focused on being a better player, right? Counter Strike player. And then I started seeing that healthy lifestyle could improve my game. So we were quite famous back then, getting well paid to pay Counter Strike. I didn't want to lose my job because I love to travel and things like that. So I understood that if I took better care of myself, I could play better, like I used back then when I was 17. And now I was already with 22 with a lot more health issues because I gained like more than 30 kilos. And a lot of other stuff. So I did lifestyle changes and I saw my gaming improving and my health improving, like back pains and allergies and things like that. But my notion of health back then was, eating some lean chicken after the gym, some rice and beans, the usual thing that you get out there. And I was going to a lot of medical doctors, but they were all obese and all about drugs and surgery. And I was like, no way, they cannot teach me about health if they don't look healthy. So I started like looking on the internet what ways I could improve. Before that, I tried every kind of allopathic medicine and every kind of alternative medicine practice, like acupuncture, chiropractors, homeopathy. I tried a lot of stuff, and nothing really worked. And then I found Demi Moore's raw food diet on Google, and I was like, raw food diet, like what? And I started searching, and there was a lot of people saying I healed this, I healed that, I'm feeling much better, and I was like, whoa! I tried everything, but I didn't try to eat like animals do, and like 700,000 species on the planet live on raw food exclusively. Human beings have lived on exclusively raw foods for like 8 millions of years. We started cooking after the last ice age, the glaciation worm. So I was like, why don't I try that? Like, I'm not going to die for a few days, right? And in 3 days after only eating fruits and vegetables, raw, like all my respiratory problems and allergy problems went away. My nose doctor, how do you guys call him in English? Otorrinolaryngologista, like
ENT. Yeah, we just abbreviated to ENT.
ENT. Yeah. So my ENT said that like I can operate you, let's do surgery, but you're not never going to heal that because you were born with these issues, right? And like in 3 days, the allergies were gone. I could breathe through my two noses. I could like smell way much better. I could run and not be fatigued after because of lack of breath. I was like, whoa, what is this? Like I knew I was onto something. And although everybody went against me, like my ex-girlfriend, my family, my friends, I knew that I was onto something. So I started like losing a lot of weight and starting to become too thin and not having energy to exercise. But I was feeling way more clarity of mind. I was feeling so much better. All symptoms went away. My back pain went away. And I was like, wow. So I needed to research more because it was not sustainable, right? I was always hungry. And then I found a guy that's called Douglas Graham, Dr. Douglas Graham. He's the father of the Frugivore movement in the world. He's more known for writing the book called 80-10-10 Diet. And then when I saw that guy, he was like probably 55 back then, something like that. But he was like so fit and like his ideas and his comments on health and yeah, the idea of us being anthropoid primates made for fruits and vegetables, the capacity to see colors, the capacity to feel the taste for sweets, our opposable thumbs so we can climb trees and pick up fruit, or 99% of our DNA being from a chimp or a bonobo, the chimp pygmy, the pygmy chimp. I was like, this makes so much sense. I never heard something in health and nutrition that made so much sense than that guy. And I was like, I bought his book, read like 300 pages in one day, and I was like, I'm going to eat a raw food diet and fruits and vegetables for the rest of my life. And since then, it was like such a blessing. After 6 months, after that 6 months, I started reading also his mentor, Dr. Herbert Shelton, the father, not the father, but the main famous proponent of the hygienic movement, the natural hygiene movement that was created in America. Our motto is health through healthful living. So he was a great proponent of water fasting. And then I did a 24-day water fast at home back then, like 16 years ago. I was considered crazy for everybody, right? But the fasting did wonderful things to me. I cried a lot around the 20 day, and I'm a pretty scientific guy. I write about science. I research science. Like all my mind is analytical. I'm not a spiritual guy, but it was the most spiritual feeling I could ever felt. It was like my body talking to my soul, or my microbiota talking to my mind. It was like two different things: a host and something else. And I could feel my body saying to me, like, I was asking this since you have 2 years of age. I was 6 since then, and it was like such a blessing. I could feel my body regenerating, and that's actually the exact word. You can see Walter Longo research on fasting mimicking diet inducing multiple system regeneration, and you can feel the regeneration going inside of your body. So after that, I swear to myself that I was going to make people aware of health through health living, make natural hygiene aware for Brazil, and reach as most people as I could. So since then, it's been almost 17 years, right? I wrote 9 books. I'm finishing my 10th on diabetes, the anti-diabetes diet. I All the books have like hundreds of scientific papers uh, in the bibliography, like quoted, right? And I created a YouTube channel. We passed the 410,000 subscribers. I was the first to talk about, water fasting, intermittent fasting, raw food diet in Brazil, like in terms of science wise, right? So I went to university, to nutrition university, spent like 5 years studying nutrition, just so I could, impact the world better, because nutrition university teach you a little bit of anatomy, physiology, nutrition, biochemistry, but still, we learned so many wrong stuff out there. But it was important for me to get a diploma, and so it became my life mission to tell people about what I think could change the world. And for sure, I don't talk too much about a vegan animal rights perspective, because if I think I can reach people through a different lens, if they can understand that we are anthropoid primates, and without fire, without cooking, without salt and oil and all these things that we use to cook, who is going to want to eat meat? Like kill a rabbit with your own hands? Drink I'm sorry for the word. Drink the the memory memory secretions from like a cow. It's so absurd. So I've been pretty well motivated to share with the world what saved my life.
Wow. Well, let's take a step back. I want to ask a few questions about, you said that as a child you had a lot of medical problems. Sounds like you had allergies, lots of congestion. Did you have asthma? What other medical conditions did you struggle with when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, the main thing that I could see is that my mental and physical performance was way lower than it should be. Like in sports, I couldn't play soccer. I couldn't do usual things as usual kids did. And mentally wise, like in video games, I was a genius. I could play really well, but in school, I was always going really, really bad. So I had a lot of allergies and respiratory issues. I had like my knees were always not bent, like open, like what people usually call me, and every kid that has that, Charlie Chaplin, right? Like open legs, like the feet were like 11 to 1 p.m., 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I had like, I could feel my uh, hypotonus on my muscularity on my back, like hypotonus, like not too many muscle on my back. So I was always like bending forward. My shoulders were always, like not open. So besides, probably some bone issues, some respiratory allergy issues, low immunity, always having fevers and colds, uh, digestive issues as I was growing up. You know, uh, yeah, that was the main stuff. When I was 22, before making the change, I was also diabetic and about to do a back surgery as well because of herniated disc. So yeah, besides trying those allergy shots, trying a lot of stuff because I couldn't breathe through one of my nostrils.
Yeah. So you didn't feel good. I mean, you were learning how to play video games, you were getting really good at it, one of the best in the entire world, but you did not feel good. Like
Ex-
your day-to-day life was one that was not of well-being. And I
Yeah,
think it's really interesting because you think of video game players, and I would never in my life think that there was a video game player that would connect how, like their physical health with their performance. You think of athletes, right? Like I always think athletes think about that eventually, but I would never think of video game player. And I know my younger son, he's super into computers, and so sometimes I watch him watch some of these YouTube players, some of these gamers, and they really are eating candy all the time. They're like literally eating candy all the time. They're just sitting in that chair eating candy. You could tell that it's a very unhealthy lifestyle. So I think it's interesting that you put those two together. Like, hey, I want to be better at this game. To be better at this game, I need to feel better. My mind needs to work better. What are the things that I could do to get there?
exactly. It took me a few years. I gotta tell you the truth. It took me a few years to visualize it, to understand what was going wrong. But as soon as I realized it, that when I started weightlifting again, I started exercising again, I started to eat a little better, stop drinking and smoking, my performance improved a lot. So I could feel that, and I wanted more. I knew I could have more. It was insights, right? I didn't knew the science back then. Now I know, like, nutrients for brain performance, for fasting inducing, increasing BDNF expression, brain derived neurotrophic factor. Now I know the science behind it. But back then I didn't correlate health with performance, even more for video game players, right? But if video game players then make nowadays a lot more money than we used to do back then, understood the connection, they could play a lot better and have a longer lasting career. If you see a lot of athletes, for example, they end up their careers too soon because of injuries and because of growing old. But that's malnutrition, that's for sure. People don't understand that malnutrition is not just a lack of nutrients, but an excess of nutrients as well.
Mhm. So you changed your diet initially. You kind of was like, okay, I've heard that I should eat lean meats and I should maybe eat low fat and
Exactly.
that kind of thing. And so then you wanted more. But did you ever just do like vegan, a non-raw vegan diet before you went to raw? Or you kind of went from this like healthy-ish sort of omnivorous diet straight to raw?
That's the thing. Back then, 17 years ago, there were no vegan information out there. There was, but like almost none. I never heard the word vegan before. Like uh, the day I found out about raw foods, it was the same day I found the vegan word, right? I knew that the word, there were people in the world being vegetarian. But like I never met a vegetarian in my life, like a person that was like, okay, I don't eat meat because I never was exposed to the concept. So when I was exposed to the concept, I thought raw foods made more sense. But in these last 17 years, I created a lot of content to help my audience, right? And like 5 years ago, I created an online vegan course that is actually using plant-based recipes, but they're all steamed. They're all pretty healthy without oils or flours or anything like that. Just real food steamed for a few minutes, and then you made a burger out of beans and like quinoa and things like that. It's just pretty, but it's steamed. So I already did that for like every once in a like on day in day out. I was going to do a recipe like that to try to make for the course that I created. So although I look a little bit more bigger and can get a little bit more stronger with grains and legumes, I don't feel as good. For me, for us natural hygienists, we see grains as birds food because birds are actually by our biology classified as granivores, animals that are made for eating grains because they have a beak that can pick out those small like quinoa or rice grains, and then they have a pouch where they can straw the grains. So we see ourselves like us natural hygienists see ourselves as frugivore animals. So the the amount of nutrients, the biochemistry, there's a lot of things going on throughout evolution that made us, more suitable for digesting and assimilating the nutrients from the fruits and vegetables instead of grains. But I already, so I ended up already eating vegan steamed food for a few meals here and there. And although it's way much better than, the omnivore diet, than, meat and animal products in general, or I don't, I prefer my raw foods, my fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. So you kind of already mentioned that when you first made this transition, everybody around you thought you had lost it. So they're like, all right, he's gone off the deep end. Maybe he played video games a little too long, smoked a little too much, whatever. We don't know what's going on, but he's lost it. So how long did it take before people were taking you seriously? And how difficult was it? I mean, you said at the beginning you lost too much weight. You were kind of, had gone a little too far with the calorie deficit, with not getting enough calories from a raw diet. So what were the most difficult parts for you in getting it to the point where you felt like you were at a good steady state and a good healthy state for you?
That's the thing, because I think the most difficult part was the social part and finding the right information. Because the living food movement out there is all about, fats and oils, like, and grain and sprouting grains. But if you see the usual living food person, they end up getting too thin because they're doing the exactly opposite from all the science suggesting 80-10-10 diets, like McDougall, Ornish, Campbell, Esselstyn, Barnard. They all talk about 80-10-10 or 70-75, 15-10, something like that, using really low amounts of fats, overt fats like nuts and seeds, and no oil whatsoever. But the living food movements they went on the wrong direction in that part. They didn't read the nutritional science about that. So they use a lot of avocados, coconut pulp, olive oil, coconut oil, and they use a lot of agave, xylitol, a lot of dried nuts and seeds, and a little bit of dried fruits. But they are scared of fruit. So they're scared of carbs. They end up putting the exactly opposite ratio, using like a diet that's around 60% fat. So that makes them too much, undernourished, under carbs, and getting too thin and not managing to maintain the diet. So I see that in America, I see that here in Brazil. Most of the people that are talking about living foods doesn't last too long in the raw food movement. So, but when I understood the right information about eating a high carb diet, a diet high in fruits, and apply it, it was really easy for the mechanic of the thing. But the social part was still a little bit harsh because people don't understand when we take our kids to McDonald's, to junk food, and to industrialized food, and to a lot of animal protein. People think that is normal, but when you try to eat what human beings have been eating for millions of years, and try to fasting, exercise every day, going to bed earlier, getting sunshine every day, you are crazy. So I was a little bit ostracized by my family, friends, etc. But I knew I was in the right path. So that was probably the hardest thing for me, the social part, understanding that I was different, but I was actually right. So when I started like wanting to work with this, and I understood all the science behind it, I was, hitting my chest and saying like, I'm right. Although everybody think I'm wrong, I know that I'm making the planet a better place for us, for everybody. Like I have 300 fruit trees on my yard. There are animals every time coming in here, trying to eat my bananas, tangerines, and mangoes and everything. So that's biodiversity. I'm helping the planet to, be a better place for us. So when you understand that, and when my family starts to see it after like 3 months, I started like exercising. I was already exercising, but they see me exercising every day. I didn't have any even a sore throat or a cold or a runny nose whatsoever. And they were like, I was the sickest, me, my brother, my mom, and my dad. I was always the first to get sick in winter, to have more colds, to have more runny noses, and be less productive whatsoever. And I was like being I was exercising every day, working every day, being way more mentally active. I didn't want a lot. I didn't need a lot more clothes to not get cold in the winter. I was always running around with a shorts without the t-shirt, and running the rain and surfing the rain, going out for a swim in the pool in the rain, but nothing could stop me anymore. And my family was like, wow. And when they saw the fast, the 24-day water fast, I did it at home, and they were like, wow, what is this? My father was like, I only saw Jesus talking about fasting like that, kid. Like they were pretty amazed. And they start to accept it because I was way more calm. For example, my dad was always, he used to smoke and drink. He was, because of his health, he was always a little bit more stressed, you can tell. Uh, Old people get grumpy because of their lifestyle habits, not because of getting old. So I was always more calm with him. I was like, Dad, I love you. Don't worry. We don't need to fight about it. But back then, when I was omnivore, eating a lot of meat, like I was always too reactive. And now I was always calm and and making things easier in every way. So they they couldn't say anything. What they could say, I was my skin was better, my looks and everything, you know. So nowadays, even my old friends that still eat a lot of meat, you know, they most of them say that I'm right. They just don't want to follow it, but I'm right, and I ended up motivating a lot more people to eat more fruits and vegetables, drop out a little meat, because they see your example and they understand that it's right. Even then, even if they don't want it for them at that particular moment, maybe one day when they get really sick, but they start, they incorporate a little bit.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'm very curious about your past and the history that you had as being a professional gamer. How old were you when you started playing video games? Could you tell us maybe just briefly what Counter-Strike is, what kind of video game that is? Because I know nothing about video games. And then I'd love to know if there's anything from the years that you were a professional gamer, did you learn any lessons then that you bring to your work now? Is there anything that you've learned from the skills, the experience, anything that you've learned from that time?
For sure, for sure. I started being a Counter Strike professional player when I was 17, and I stopped around 22 years of age. I played professionally for 5 years. We had contract signed as an athletes, right? So we need to play for 6 hours per day. We traveled the world. We were like athletes being paid. So Counter Strike is a computer game that you have to, it's counter terrorists against terrorists. So you have to shoot each other to try to plant the bomb, or the counter terrorists have to defuse the bomb or kill their terrorists. So it's a shooting game, right? So the nowadays I think the prizes for a tournament is like $1 million for first place. It's like really big money. And what I learned from Counter Strike is that one thing's for sure: thoughts become things. When you want something too bad, you have to visualize it, go for it. You have to work for it. But you can achieve impossible things with your mind, and that's why probably the biggest learning that I could have back then. For sure, it was quite cool traveling the world, staying in 6 stars hotels, making my English a little better, because I'm self-taught with English. There were a lot of good parts, but the main part, I think, it was like, even because when I was young, I was a low performance kid. I knew I had to be determined. So I knew I had to be, like, focused for what I wanted. And after seeing Counter Strike, for example, we were the best in Brazil and the fourth, fifth of the world back then in my time. Uh, but we could win any team Brazil like 16-0, like 16 rounds to zero. We were really, really good. But during a tournament, if we didn't want that much, maybe a team even could win one game from us, right? And maybe lose in the finals, but still. So I think mentality, you see that a lot in sports. Some people that maybe be underestimated, underrated, and they want it so much. They work themselves out so much for getting there, being the best, and performing the best, that they end up uh, playing better than somebody that was like two or three times better than them. So I think it's all in our heads. It's what I tell patients. It's what I tell a lot of people when I do lectures. Uh, I did a TEDx, for example, here in Brazil, and because I didn't want to lose any word in my TED talks, I fasted for 3 days on only water. I actually coordinated all the buffet that the organizers from the TEDx in Brazil wanted to do, a raw food buffet for all the 180 people over there. So I coordinated the whole buffet while I was fasting and also working with my own stuff. And then I went to stage after 3 days of fasting, ate like one cucumber, one orange, and gave the lecture. And I was the lectures. I think it's pretty good. It has like a millions, thousands of views on like 150, 160,000 views on TEDx channel, and I think when there's a will, there's a way. Our minds can do anything we want, because a lot of people think like, oh, raw food's difficult, changing our lifestyle is difficult, it's better to take a pill. But like, there's a lot of science nowadays to prove what us hygienists have been talking for 200 years, that drugs only palliate symptoms. They suppress the symptoms, but they don't remove the cause of diseases. So people try shortcuts because of our, human biology, for looking for shortcuts for conservation of energy. But still, there's no shortcuts for health. So I think everybody can make their lives a lot better, the planet a lot better, and the lives of everybody around us a lot better, just by being a little bit more conscious.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree that thoughts become things. I love that you learned that from your time. And what a great example when you're playing something completely virtual. It's not even real. Like a video game is virtual within virtual, right? If you believe that we're already in the virtual. So virtual within virtual. That's super cool. So how old do you have to be to start playing a game before you get to a professional? Like, did you start playing video games when you're like 5 years old or?
Yeah, like, I think our generation that was growing with like a lot of video games and access to this kind of technology end up being, my mom, for example. My mom have difficulties. My mom's 72. I love her. Yeah, I'm not talking bad about her. But you see that the older generation have a lot more difficulty with technology whatsoever. So you can start playing video games at 17 and become a Counter Strike professional player. It's just that some people have more, more easiness, comes out more easy. This computer skills, more like video game skills. Like back then, for example, a lot of people try to become like us because we're the best team in the world, one the best team in Brazil, and one of the best in the world. So we had a lot of advantages, like traveling and like being celebrities. But not everybody could play like us. You know, like millions of players in Brazil, and there were like five of us. You know, like a really small amount of people could uh, overperform like that. So there's no. I think all of the players that were like good in Counter Strike were actually being really good uh, athletes when they were growing up. I was one of the exceptions, but the more coordinated you are in real life, usually the better you can play in Counter Strike, right? Because there's a hand, both hands coordination, because you have to use the mouse, the keyboard, you have to talk, and you have to think a lot of stuff really fast. So you miss 1 inch in the mouse with the crosshair, and you lose like $10,000 or $5,000. Like, so you lose like getting advancing the tournament. So it's yeah, it's pretty demanding, but anybody can become a better player, and that's the thing. Nowadays, I have a lot of patients that are athletes, and because I show the science through all of my contents, like even internet content, that if you are healthier, you have a better reproductive system. If you're healthier, you have a better neurological system. If you're healthier, for example, AGEs, the advanced glycation end products, one of the cooked food toxins, are actually correlated with athletic injuries and more bone fractures, more Achilles tendon damage, a lot of stuff you can actually correlate. uh, you know, yeah, AGs, for example, damage sirtuins. Sirtuins are actually the repairing mechanisms of our bodies. So if people understood that if you want to be a better person, you want to be a better athlete, you want to work better with your work, whatever it is, you want to be more coordinated. Being healthier is actually the bomb, actually the new thing on the block, like the next perception human beings we're going to have, because we think that somebody that goes vegan, or take care of their health, is like sissy, or is silly. It's not. But people don't realize that you can make more money when you're healthier. You can be more sexy, more intelligent, more beautiful. There's a lot of research to support that. Yeah, for example, research showing that if you sleep better, you get better grades, better scores in visual aspects. If you eat more fruits and vegetables because of their phytonutrients, you get a better grades in like studies. Like you become more beautiful to the participants in the study. So why not taking better care of your health? Like it's
Yeah.
nonsense.
And my favorite, which is when you feel better, you can serve better. And especially for moms and parents out there, when we feel better, we're able to spread more joy and love and service to our children and our families, which is what a lot of people desire. Well,
Exactly.
let's get a little bit more into being a frugivore, because I definitely want to hear more about this. So I'll just be 100% transparent that I've always been intrigued by this, okay? Like, I feel like it's something that I wish I could do for some reason. And I've tried 3 times. So I'm from Panama, I'm Panamanian, but I live in the state of Washington, which it gets cold several months per year. But I've actually tried this like in August, which is like the hottest month here. And I cannot make it more than 1 or 2 weeks because I get super cold. I pee like every 5 minutes. I'm like constantly, I feel like I have to put a catheter in because it's so annoying to have to pee all the time. And then the cravings. It's like by the end of the time, I'm just like, give me some rice, Soy panameña. I want some rice. Give me some rice and beans. So, a lot of the criticisms I've heard about fruitarianism or even just a raw diet is that you just have to eat so much. You have to eat such a big volume to get enough calories. And then there's also a criticism, which I know I hate the whole protein question, but it does become a little bit more important, especially with aging. So my goal is to try to make it to 100. So one of the things that I get worried about as I get older is maintaining enough muscle mass to make sure I don't get frail. That frailty is a risk factor when you get older, if you fall, if you have any of those problems. So tell me a little bit about your way of eating and getting enough nutrients, and is protein a concern or not? What are your thoughts and opinions on that?
So let's go. It was a big question. But first of all, we have to understand that sarcopenia is inversely correlated with the consumption of fruits and vegetables. I know that you know that, but so your listeners, inversely correlated in epidemiology suggests that it protects from sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass during aging. So that's one thing that we have to acknowledge. The second is that if you go to primitive societies like the Papua Highlanders, one of the last hunter-gatherers in the planet, the societies on the planet, hunter-gatherer societies, according to the research done in the 80s or 90s, it's a long time ago, the consumption of protein from a Papua Highlander, it was like around 35 grams of protein. These are black men, really strong, living in the savannah, living in the forest, right? So,
and just to clarify, that's 35 grams of protein per day, per person.
Per day, per person. That's like really little. Like, I don't know if your listeners know, but the WHO recommends 56 grams of protein per person for a 70 kilo man, 140, 150 pound man. So it's like almost half of what a World Health Organization recommends. And if we look at, I don't know if you know McDougall's work, but McDougall's quote a lot of the old protein researchers like Rose, and there's like a amino acid requirement testing that Rose did that showed that you can there's a margin safety for protein consumption, but that margin safety is like really the usual number that a human being can consume is really low. But so let's go through some stuff. For example, cooking actually causes denaturalization of proteins. You can find that in any scientific article because you when you cook the food, you cause changes in macronutrients and micronutrients. So, for example, nutrients are labile, thermolabile, thermal, oxygen, and photolabile. I have to think in Portuguese and translate to English. Right? So that means that labile, it means sensitive in scientific terms. So they're sensitive to heat, to oxygen, and to
light.
Light, that's it. Thank you. Photolabile. And then so they're these phytonutrients, these vitamins, not the minerals. The minerals just leach out from the food to the water under the pan. But or inside the pan, right? I'm thinking the steamer. But so when you think about it, these nutrients are pretty sensitive. And I don't know if you know Bruce Ames. He's a really famous American scientist. He's probably 100 years of age right now. His research is like mind-blowing. The guy is a genius. And he's not vegan or raw vegan or anything, but he talks a lot about micronutrients. And he has this triad theory, that the body reallocates nutrients to more important functions at the moment, harming actually longevity and health in the long run. So I think Joe Furman, he's a famous plant-based doctor. He did a really good insight. The best formula for longevity is nutrient density, because all people think it's caloric density, but we have to think of nutrient density. The less calories you eat and the more nutrients you eat, the better you have a chance for achieving longevity. Because these phytonutrients, we even have research from David Sinclair showing the hormetic phytonutrients. So these phytonutrients actually activate what we call longevity genes. So they activate these longevity and repairing pathways that we call FOXO, NPK, sirtuins. So the more phytonutrients we can eat, for example, my persimmons that I eat over my place is actually damaged by the sun. You can see the skin being all, like a raisin. You know that the skin of the raisin is like a dried. So that is actually hormesis. That is actually the hormesis processing plants. So we actually end up doing xenohormesis when we eat these stressed plants. So there's a lot of actually we have no gold standard research for raw foods. I'm pretty aware of that because there's no scientists doing research on raw foods. But if we look to individual papers, individual sciences, like the more antioxidants we have, the less aging we have. The AGEs, for example, all the Maillard reaction end products is the cooked food toxins. They actually induces all the things that aging induces, all the things that we try to protect from us to aging. Because Maillard reaction end products, we know about AGEs, but there are acrylamides, acrylamides, alleles, the advanced lipid peroxidation end products. There's like 400 toxins produced by cooking food. And they all are pro-inflammatory, pro-oxidants, damage sirtuins. Their, AGs, for example, are correlated with neurological diseases, with brain atrophy, with cancer. Cancer tissues have AGs inside of them. They're considered diabetogenic, pro-atherosclerotic, pro, causing immune reactions like what we call the white tide, the leukocytosis factor that is called digestive leukocytosis. There was like a scientist from the 30s, Paul Kolchakov. He won a Nobel Prize for showing that raw foods don't cause digestive leukocytosis, but cooked foods do cause it. And everybody that already tried a raw food diet, they all suggest, like, I feel a lot better. Maybe that's hard to maintain because you need a little bit of knowledge about nutrition and a little bit of details on raw foods to understand how to make it possible. Because there's no fruitarian animals in nature. There are frugivore animals. That's one of the parts that people underestimate or don't understand. These anthropoid primates, they eat a lot of vegetables. They don't eat just fruits. Fruitarian means eating only fruit, and that's not sustainable in the long run. You can eat for a few days, that's not a big deal because our bodies maintain nutritional reserves. But in the long run, we need a lot of vegetables. So I think in a frugivore diet that is made out of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, and a lot of other plant material like mushrooms, for example. I eat mushrooms. I can eat some peas once in a while. I can eat even fresh beans once in a while. You can eat these foods from the pods. I'm not suggesting against it. I'm just saying that fruits and vegetables should be the mainstay in a raw food diet. So you end up getting, if I can answer you correctly, we easily can reach out like 60 grams of protein in a raw food frugivore diet in a day. If you eat like a kilo of vegetables per day, even a kilo of broccoli. I love broccoli. I can eat like if it's fresh and young and tender, I can eat a half a kilo. That's already 15 grams of protein easily, right? If you put like a handful of pumpkin seeds already, you get more 15 grams, 10 grams, 15 grams of protein. I have to do the math, but you can easily meet out our RDAs and DRIs around protein and every kind of micronutrient as well. We can easily reach them, and the macronutrient ratio that all the vegan medical doctors suggest that it's like 80 and 10. It's the same ratio for the blue zones, for example. So If you think guava, for example, a usual fruit, a small fruit, I think it's Brazilian fruit actually, guava, it's 13% protein in that in it. So for example, rice is 8% protein. So if you eat a kilo of guava, you're already eating like 28 grams of protein, for example. So it's not easy, it's not hard to reach the amount of protein that a vegan diet or omnivore diet is providing. For sure, if you want a high protein diet, like ingest 2 kilograms of protein per kilo of body weight, for sure that's almost impossible to manage without using soy and refined, protein. But the usual DRIs, dietary reference intake for protein and for any micronutrient, you can easily reach out and surpass with a frugivore diet. But with the macronutrients intact, without the destrinization of carbohydrates, without the fats becoming rancid, without the denaturation of proteins, I think you end up getting more bang for your buck, in terms of nutrition. And about the cold, and about the cold, I understand for sure. We are anthropoid primates. We were born in Africa. We were not made for cold environments. So that makes hard, like mentally, emotionally, for a raw food diet. But I have patients living in the UK, living in any cold places, even patients in US living up in Washington or in other cities, and they tend to do pretty well when they understand the mechanics behind it. And even then, you can, be 80%, 70% raw and steam some, broccoli, some lentils, and because steaming would be the least damage way of cooking your food, right? The most conservative cooking, as we call in hygiene. So you can steam some stuff and still, have the warm food and not be deprived of that, and managing to work a raw food diet.
So there's ways around it. There's ways to get it done in a more reasonable way. But yeah, I guess I never actually knew that there was a difference between fruitarian and frugivore. So what you're saying is fruitarian, they're emphasizing pretty much mainly fruit, and with frugivore, your fruit and vegetables, some nuts and seeds. Yeah, I'm a big believer in vegetables. So I've never tried to neglect the vegetables. Love the vegetables. Just when they're raw, it takes a lot more time to eat too. That's the thing. You have to make sure you make time for those big, huge salads. Takes a long time.
That I agree with you. But you end up saving time in the cooking part to end up spending a little bit more time chewing the food. So I probably end up, spending around an hour per day chewing my food, half 40 minutes in lunch and 20 minutes at dinner, because I only do 2 meals per day, right? Intermittent fasting. But like, yeah, for sure, you do more drawing work. But even the scientific part in orthodontics that suggests that could be better for health. For
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's advantages to that too. Even just cleaning our teeth, how the roughage cleans our teeth, decreases our risk of cavities, that kind of thing. And also for satiety. I know that I love eating and I love chewing because it gives you that satiety feedback. It helps you feel full and satisfied. Just a lot of work sometimes, especially if you jump straight to it. So something to work up to. But you mentioned intermittent fasting, which is something that I'm super interested in. So I've practiced some time restricted feeding, intermittent fasting, some extended water only fasting myself, super into it, love it. So I would love to know your regimen and what you do on a regular basis and what your experience is with fasting.
If I can suggest you, I have like 3 documentaries and a book written on fasting. I just launched this book in Amazon. I just received this copy from Amazon actually. So I have my first, one of my first books was of hygienic fasting nature surgery. So it's also available on Amazon. So I did a 39-day water fast last year on Tanglewoods Wellness Center in Costa Rica. It's run by Lauren Lockman. It's not medical supervised because Lauren is not a medical doctor. But we made a deal to record a documentary for his channel and for my channel. So I did a 39-day water fast over there. I have been not just doing water fast, but intermittent fasting for almost 17 years now. So yeah, the what I learned recently for the last 4 or 5 years is to pay a lot more attention in what we call now chrononutrition and time restricted feeding, because people end up eating too late at night, and that's way worse than not being uh, on an intermittent fasting, my humble opinion. So chrononutrition is a big thing to pay attention in our intermittent fasting. But my regimen is usually 18-6. So it's 18 hours of fasting per day and a feeding window from noon to around 6 p.m. So I eat with the sun, as a hygienist used to say that back then, 200 years ago. Now we have a lot of data. Like I can feel my hunger way higher exactly around noon, and my second wave of hunger being around 4 to 5 p.m. in the afternoon. So it's actually the same times that anthropoid primates prefer to eat, right, in nature. So and usually you can see primatology research showing that they eat their fruits at midday and their vegetables in the end of the day. And it's quite impressive because every frugivore person that I ever talked to does exactly the same thing. It seems like 17 years now, I don't care too much for fruit during the evening, but I care too much about fruit in the beginning of the day. So there's a lot of suggestions in primatology, but they don't know actually the biological mechanism. So yeah, there's a lot of research nowadays about fasting, like Sachin Panda, Walter Longo, they're the main, Luigi Fontana and Mark P. Madsen are the main, and Rafael De Cabo are the main scientists that I research from, right? The 18-6 is still not, like supported by science, but I feel better, I do it, and I think it's better. But what science suggests is like 14-10 or 16-8. It's already well researched and well backed up.
Wrapping it up now, I'd love to know, what do you wish more people knew?
That life could be a lot better. The planet could be saved. And, like I, as an omnivore, thought that natural food, that, it was bad. I thought it was better to eat barbecues because it was more tasty. And afterwards, I was like, they if I could give durians, Palmer mangoes, and like uh, what we call honey drop figs, like in Portugal, pingo de mel, figo pingo de mel, to people all around the world, if they could understand that this food is way much more tastier and makes you feel like a million, like it's nowadays it's so silly for me, like doing what I did back then and being sick all the time. It was like people think that raw foods is difficult. For me, being sick is difficult. Being like every time having symptoms, having low performance, that is the hard part of life. The good part of life is living healthy. Nature provided us with a reward circuitry for one reason. Nature wanted us to have sex, to live healthy, to eat natural foods, because that is actually the good secretion of dopamine and sensitivity to the dopamine hormones, like neurotransmitters. So that's, my wish is that everybody could feel for 1 year a natural hygiene lifestyle, like a frugivore diet, exercising every day strenuously, getting sunshine every day, living around plants. Like we could go back to paradise, at least mentally and physically. even though we cannot go actually back to the forest, right?
I love it. Do you have a morning routine?
Yeah, I wake up, respond some messages on cell phone, start working a lot, and then around 10 a.m. I started like stop working or 10:30, and then I go to the garden, pick up some fruits, maybe take care a little bit of my garden, and then go out to exercise, lift some weights, run, surf, or play tennis, and then I come back, have lunch, have a siesta, because there's a lot of research behind siestas, and not too much research, but there is research and there's common knowledge to it. And then I work a little bit more, and then I take around 5:30 I have dinner and take some time off for me.
Nice. Sounds like a great day. I love the siesta. I have to integrate that into my routine every day.
There was a Harvard research showing that Greece tried to abolish siesta in 2007. They ended up having 38% more heart attacks, or 28 or 38% more heart attacks, just because of skipping siesta.
Wow, that's not good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been really great, Dr. Corassa. So if you could tell us where we can connect with you and what products and services you offer.
Yeah, Dr. Corassa in all my social medias, DrCorassa, like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. But I'm creating the Dr. Corassa Raw Food Nutritionist profile in English in all social media as well. Still young, not hundreds of thousands of followers, but still like I'm starting to grow the medias. So you can see my English content, and my YouTube Portuguese channel also have now subtitles for a lot of languages. So you can also watch my YouTube Portuguese channel as well and just put the subtitles. But I'm publishing my books slowly on Amazon in English, but they're all in Portuguese already, and we send to all over the world in Portuguese, and Amazon sends in English, right, or in Kindle. And then I have online courses, but only in Portuguese still, but I'm going to translate them with time. I also have retreats here in Brazil, raw food retreats from 5 to 10 days per every semester, every January and July. So people can come here and learn even to do cupcakes, lasagna, everything, but in a frugivore way, right? Without oils, flour, or agave, chilito, nothing industrialized, just fresh raw foods, just maybe process it in a food processor or a little bit in the dehydrator, but that's it. I don't use, not because the living food movement consider oils raw food. For me, it's not raw food. It can be raw, but it's not fresh. So I don't use it never to teach my students. And besides the courses, the books, and the retreats, I attend patients online as well, or in person, but it must be in the countryside of the Rio de Janeiro, right?
Doesn't sound like a bad deal.
For sure.
I just have to go to Rio de Janeiro.
It's 3 blocks from the beach that holds the world tournament, the surf world tournament finals, actually. So the WCSL, the main surf tournament in the world, the finals happens like 3 blocks from my house. So it's
that sounds really cool.
Yeah, pretty beautiful place. Saquarema, the name of the city.
Wow. Okay, well, if you could leave us with your top 3 tips for someone that wants to work towards obtaining their health and well-being, where should they start?
Study, practice, study. You need knowledge. If you don't have the right knowledge, you are going to do the wrong things. So studying natural hygiene would be the best tip I can give you. For example, in America, you have Goldhammer, you have, I forgot his name as well. He's a fasting supervisor with True North Health. He's usually with the Natural Hygiene Association in America. They have like a congress every year. So they meet up So that would be my main suggestion. Read Herbert Shelton, Goldhammer nowadays, Furman. They're all hygienists, right? These natural hygiene model of medicine. So, or you can read my work as well, but it's mostly in Portuguese. So, study and putting into practice. You gotta go and learn a raw food recipe and try it, and then learn it, and then try it, and then learn it, and then try it. It's like learning tango, like dancing tango. It's really hard, but if you keep studying and keep trying, you keep getting better in it. So that's pretty much it. It's my humble opinion that everybody can, become, even even the usual allopathic science shows that you have a better prognostic for your disease if you're living healthy. So even if you're in chemotherapy, doing usual allopathic drugs and anything like that, the usual treatments, you need healthful living. You need to go to bed earlier, have dinner earlier, exercise, eat a plant-based, fresh food diet, and get a lot of sunshine. That's my main tips.
Yeah, lifestyle medicine. Well, Dr. Corassa, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything that you do. I really appreciate you sharing your story, your journey, all your knowledge and your wisdom with
today's
us.
episode.
And I hope that you have a very fantastic day. I mean, I know you will.
Please subscribe
That's for
to
sure.
my podcast so that you never miss an episode. You're the reason I'm here, and I want to share it all with you. Thank you for listening, and have a plantastic day.